What's up, everybody? How you doing? I'm waiting for 8:30. That's what I was waiting for me. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you all coming in. Now, I got a quick question for you. Can you hear the music in the background? I can't. It's only one of those things that I can hear, or I can hear it. Let me see. Hear the music in the background. I can't. It's only one of those things that I can hear, or I can hear it. Let me see. Yeah, I don't hear it in the background. Let me know if you can hear the music in the background. Hey, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's Frosty. Thanks for coming in. Today, I think I have a fun story. I think this is going to be something that you guys like. Hey, Starika, do me a favor. Go ahead and do exclamation point cake. I think you'll like this. No music. Well, let me try this. Let me turn it up just a hair. Do you hear it now? Hey, what's up, Blistering Barnacles? How you doing? Let's see if I got that worked out. Hopefully that works for you. Oh, you can hear it now. Okay, so let me turn it down. If it gets too loud, let me know and I'll do some adjustments. Stan Horn's in the house. Let's try that again. Jeff Davis is here. It doesn't look like it's taking it, Starika. Give it a little bit of time to let it allow in. Dan McCumber's in here. Thank you for being in here. Blistering Barnacles, I hope you're doing well, good sir. Thank you. Brown Sugar, good morning. Hope you are well. For those of you who couldn't figure it out by the thumbnail that's listed there, wherever the hell it is. Wow, Blistering Barnacles, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times that came across. That's crazy. Hold on. Wait. Is that Mr. Danny? Are you kidding me? What's up, Danny? How you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Thank you. Do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Increase that number that's here or, yeah, over there. Hope you're doing well. Oh, my God. That's cool. So, folks, this Diabera is a blast from the past. This is one of my childhood friends. We go back years and years and years. Good to see you, brother. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. Again, please hit that subscribe button. Let me know that if you're not already, you may already subscribed. Good to see you. Do me a favor. Give the, decades. That's no joke. Give the wife a big hug for me. Tell her I said hi and I love her. Hope she's well. Yeah, take care. Holy smokes, man. Blast from the past. Good to see you, brother. ATS is in the house. Good to see you. AZ Coins is here. Good morning, Farm Dog. Hope you're well. I'll get that cake command here done. Let me see, make sure that chatbot is up and running. Let's check the pirate first. See if the pirate works. If the pirate works, then I'll know it's up. If not, I need to reset the Streamlabs. We should be good to go. Hopefully that becomes active and takes off here in just a second. Sometimes Streamlabs takes a few minutes to get in. All right. Damn, that was cool, Danny. You just made me smile. That's awesome. So today, we're going to be talking about the Yoachum Silver Dollar. So if you've never heard this story and you're anywhere around the Ozarks, this is definitely something that you're going to want to be a part of. My last name used to be Ibarra. Oh, interesting. Cool. It's I don't know if it's a popular name or not. I don't know. All I know is I've known Dan for a long time. Good buddy of mine. Actually, I just hung out with Mick the other day. Him and I went to dinner. So, yeah, lots of blasts from the past. It's awesome. Well, that squirreled me a little bit. That's a good thing, though. It's always good to see friends come in. Refresh my phone. Oh, yeah, don't worry about it, but it happens. It's probably the service provider. It is what it is. It's not a big deal. I do understand, so it's all good. My stream bot is not working, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this off real quick and bring it back up. Let's get into the... Get back in here. Why is it? Oh, no. let's get back in here. Let's turn this off and turn it back on and see if we can get this to work. Refresh this. Turn that off and let's turn that back on. It's like Smith. Yeah. It's like Garcia or Gonzalez in Mexico, most likely. Yeah, it's pretty common, I believe. Okay, well, cool. Awesome. That is too cool. All right, so me threw his first command in. We'll see if we can get the cloud bot active. I think it should be good. We should be good to go now. If not, we'll check it out. I'll make sure that it comes up here in a few minutes. It takes a second to come in. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started on this. Again, thank you all for coming in. Don't forget to smash that thumbs up. I'm going to start talking about the Yoachum Silver Dollar. We're going to break this out and we're going to kind of start talking a little bit about what's going on. So disclaimers up front. The Yoachum Silver Dollar is something that I learned about a little over a week ago. It was brought to my attention by Philip the Board, who said, hey, Frosty, this is something that might be interesting for you. It might be something that you want to look into. And so I did. I dug in, absolutely got fascinated by it, and decided to break down some research, see what I could figure out regarding this particular item, and see if I couldn't come up with a hypothesis or kind of narrow down maybe some locations. But what I ran into were more barriers than successes. So I'm going to kind of break this out. There are two primary resources that I'm going to be utilizing for this. I'll make sure that they get put in at the end of the stream into the description. I don't want to put it in before, because you'll just simply go to the description and read it and bail. But one of them is a really good, a kind of in-depth overview of what was happening during the time frame, kind of some of the covariants, if you will, that could have mistaken or misled the theory or the discussion. So there could be a lot of fact mixed with a lot of fact from other events that kind of came together and it kind of morphed the story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over documented evidence that I have been able to find, talk a little bit about where these items were located and who pulled them across. Then I'm going to talk about a little bit about what I believe to be going on here, based off the information that I've found. Now, to preface this, I've already put the video out. So the video's, 6, 7, 8 minutes long, however long it is. And it's just kind of a generalized overview. I want this to be a little bit more in depth. But one of the problems that I discussed in the video that I found with this particular item is that during this time frame, we're talking about anywhere from the late 1700s all the way up into 1865, 1870s time frame. And during that time frame, we had something called the Civil War. And because the Civil War was going on, there were a lot of these places that changed hands. They changed hands north, south. There were local militia that took over the area. Then there were southern forces, the northern forces, and it would go back and forth. And this happened 2 or 3 times during the kind of stint of the war. And when that happens, what would normally happen in this event would be that the people who took over that particular area would claim it. We've seen this with the New Orleans Mint. We've seen this with Dahlonega. When they came in, what would happen is that they would come in, they would take things over, they would mint their own coinage. At Dahlonega and at the mint in New Orleans, you would see that they're minting gold and silver to help with their war efforts. They would take their local mines, take that information, and then they would, mint what they wanted to. Also during this time frame, you had a situation where local minters had regional based money, and the regional based money was something that was kind of still approved, because at this time the US Mint was still a fledgling entity. They weren't minting tons and tons of coins yet, and there was more of a demand for money than there was that the mint could provide, right? They couldn't really give out enough information to be able, or enough coinage, to be able to cover all that supply and demand that was being generated during this time frame. And so remember that when we're talking about the start of the mint during that time frame, around independence, 1776, we're talking about 2.5 million people already in the colonies, excluding the Native Americans that were here. Now, that's a large number. So when you're talking about having to mint coins and you see some of these, many times you're talking about tens of thousands of these being minted instead of the millions and millions you would see as you got on later in years. Even when you were minting into the millions, those things wouldn't always reach back into the backwoods areas or into these smaller areas like you would see in this particular area, which is the Ozark Mountains. And so this Ozark region had a number of private dollars, and one of them happens to be the Yoachum Silver Dollar. Now, there's a lot of lore about this, and a lot of people find this lore out when they're doing things like looking for family history, or maybe they know about it, they're actually trying to research it. So again, as I continue to look through these things, what I ran into were barriers in the documentation because the items were burned in the war, records were destroyed, ownership changed hands during the Civil War time frame. And so there were a lot of changes made during this time frame that caused it to be very difficult to really track the lineage of certain families, track the lineage of certain items, and really talk really in depth about exactly what was going on. A lot of the information I have here, some of it is hearsay, some of it is spoken lore that's been written down, and some of it is documented evidence. And I'm going to share all of that with you and kind of tell you where that information came from. You make up your mind at the very end of this part. I'll make sure that I tell you what my personal thoughts are, although during this you might be able to pick that up. Kevin Hawthorne, my transportation brother from a Florida mother's in the house. What's going on, Kevin? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. I'm not able to see the screen right now because of the data that I have up. If Streamlabs, the games and stuff are not working, please put that in chat. Let me know, and I'll have to refresh that again. All right. So the first thing that we look at when we're talking about this particular element is where or why were people looking at this particular coin? Well, obviously, when it comes to hoards and when it comes to famous thing, the lure of treasure, the lure of finding a major jackpot of a silver hoard or a bunch of silver coins that are highly sought after, highly collectible, it's definitely something that people are interested in, right? It's going to pique somebody's interest. And so when we look at this, there usually were two camps. Either people who were doing family and lineage, trying to find out if they were tied to or associated with the Yoachum family, the proper Yoachum family in this story. But the Yoachum families, kind of like we were talking about the Hebers earlier when my buddy Danny came in, right? There's a very popular French name. And so there were other Yoachums in the region during this time frame. And again, are they talking about the same family? Could they have possibly messed things up? Could there have been more lore relating to this? And again, we'll get through some of that. One of the things I was able to find was regarding two people of prominence. Now, when we talk about people of prominence, it's really good because usually prominent people had either a good documentation because of their banking, their travels, or because of their affluence in other areas, whether it be cotton, whether it have been oil, whether it have been precious metals or whatever. And so I found two families of precedence, the Trimble family and the Coker family. And during this time frame, around the 1818, 1819 time frame, there was documented that Harry Schoolcraft, who noted children coming in and doing stuff like that, were coming in, they were doing the shops and stuff. He was noted that those two had came in and stayed with Solomon Yoachum and his son Jacob. They also call him Jake. And this was during his tour and his kind of reviewings of the Ozarks in and around the early 1800s. And so again, we have documentation of affluent people staying with the Yoachums during this time frame and the validation of the Yoachum dollar actually having existed. Now that's really important because again, when you talk about the Yoachum Silver Dollar, we're talking about this thing already having been in place. It's a local, regional thing. It's something that is really interesting to people. It's something that was used to trade. So again, very region, very local. But there was also something happening during this time frame that is really important for people to understand. And that is other world events that worked with the same general people in the same general region. One of those happens to regard the Native Americans called the Delaware tribe. Now, the Delaware tribe obviously came from Delaware. And when the U.S. government exchanged, we'll do exchanged, basically stole and took over the land from them in that Mississippi River area for the land that they had in Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. They took them down and put them on that reservation. So when they took possession of that particular reservation, they basically kicked off the squatters. What's going on, Eric? How you doing? So when they kicked off the squatters, a lot of people had documented during that time frame what families had been displaced for that done. One of those families was the Yoachums. However, the Yoachums actually had worked out a deal with the Indians of that time frame and said, hey, we would like to work the land. We would like to do that. And it was one common practice for the alternative to being displaced was that they would take the low-lying fields, those low-lying areas, and they would work the land. They would pay rent. They would do cultivation. They would do things like pasture, livestocking, things of that nature, and kind of work the land for the Indians, so to speak. But again, they would be able to stay there, earn a living, and then they would pay, quote unquote, like a tax to the official Indian agent government, right? And so this happened during that time frame, and Solomon Yoachum was one of these people who was very adept, a businessman, worked with them and said, hey, we want to work this. We have this area. We would like to continue to do this. You know, we'll pay you a tax or do whatever. And this is where I came across, and if you've seen the video, you'll know that I ran across something. When I saw this, I was like, oh my God, what is it with silver hoards and peaches? Well, Solomon Yoachum was really good at distilling spirits, and he used the peaches to distill a type of brandy and a type of wine that the Indians absolutely adored. And because of this, they would take what they called bits. And we've talked about this in other videos. We've talked about this in other lives. You take a silver bar or a silver steak or whatever, and you cut off a piece of it, and then you trade it. That piece is called a bit. And they would take that and they would trade it in for their brandy. And what they would do is the Yoachums would hammer that out, stamp it with their whatever, and then they would create the Yoachum Silver Dollars. Now, that's one thing that's very well documented. That's something that actually happened. They know that happened. We've seen silver dollars. There are copies, no cake. I'll see if I can fix that, Starika. But there are certain things that they can validate and verify. So the Yoachum Silver Dollar absolutely 100% existed. The presence or the longevity of that particular thing is not in question, right? We know it's there. They're very rare, and they're very rare for a reason. And we'll get to that here in just a minute. I'll tell you what my theory is on this, and we'll give you some facts as to why that was most likely the case. But this peach brandy, again, we talked about this when I did the Hoard for the Redfield Silver Dollars. The Redfield Hoard was a massive hoard out of Reno, Nevada. There's a video. You can go check that out. I love that video. A lot of great things. But that dude had a penchant for peaches, man. He loved peaches. And here we are again, another gentleman who's making peach wine and peach brandy and getting silver in exchange. I just thought that hearing this story, and again, digging into it, I've got to look for more stories. I've got a couple more that people have sent me, and I've got to see if there's a peach connection, because it made me smile. So I'm going to see if I'm going to start digging in. Frosty's on a mission to determine if peaches and collecting silver are are cotangent. But again, during this time frame, he erected a distillery and he had all this stuff, and they absolutely loved this stuff. And so they built a really good, solid relationship. Now, here intel comes one of the first major issues. What's up, Marshall Shell? Yeah, I love the Redfield Hoard story. It's amazing. That's probably one of the funnest videos I've done. There's other videos that I really enjoy, but that's probably one of the funnest ones I've done. I found so many cool things out about him that even there are a lot of people that didn't know. So I'm going to be doing a follow-up on the Redfield later on. But anyway, yeah, thanks for being in here, Marshall Shell. It's good to see you. Hey, Mark Wahog, how you doing? Hope you're well. But again, the Indians absolutely loved this brandy, and so he established cultivated a good relationship. But there was a man, a government lawman that came into the region, and he started disrupting things. He started trying to kind of lay down the letter of the law. And he was bypassing the agreements that were done with the local settlers on this government land. And so he was trying to get, quote unquote, the outlaws. Now, Solomon Yoachum wasn't necessarily a stand-up. He was a rough and tumbler. He was a fighter. He fought the status quo. I know there's a lot of people in here who would probably like that story. But again, he was one of those who he challenged authority. He had a mission. His mission was to sell his brandy, sell his whiskey, sell his wines, and cultivate his land. And this John Campbell dude came in and tried to disrupt that. He disrupted just for the Solomon Yoachum. He disrupted for a lot of people in that area. And Lynn Morrow in 1983 put out a book, wrote an article in what was called the Ozarkian Mountaineer, and it was titled Saint Yoachum and the Delawares. And they called him Saint Yoachum because the Indians loved him, right? He was providing them a good, valuable source of income. They had good trade. They were getting this really awesome brandy. But John Campbell came in and kind of disrupted it. And one of the things that was stated by Lynn Morrow was that he was tossed from the nation in 1825. So Solomon set up just south of the reservation below Finley's Mouth on the St. James, opening up a secondary distillery and making more whiskey and brandy. Now, what's important about that is it gives us a location, a very specific location to where they moved. So it's important to understand that in 1818, when this story is occurring, what was going on during this time frame is that there were more than one location for the Yoachum family homestead. Okay, so when they're talking about locations, again, we know of 2, potentially 3, because of the travels that they made in and around the area, being displaced by this John Campbell character, and then setting up south. So we know that there's 2, maybe even 3 locations for this particular homestead. Again, the problem is when you're trying to tie the homesteads to some of this stuff, you have to look at all the things that happened during the Civil War and the changes of documentation. And so some of this stuff has been lost. So to find out where they actually were was kind of for naught. Now, I'm going to change direction, and I'm going to talk about something else that was happening during this time frame, which was another migration that was happening from the Delawares down at the same time as the Indian Nation, which there were people coming through. You had Spanish coming through. You had people who were looking for mines. You had the metallurgists, and you had people looking for these quote unquote epic hoards and epic veins of silver that were supposedly legendary in Spain and in neighboring areas. And so I do this legendary thing because, again, when we look at some of the more recent and even past, we're talking about mid to late 1800s geological surveys of that Ozark region, it's more limestone, and the limestone area isn't really conducive to silver deposits, silver mineral deposits. And so the makeup of the land doesn't necessarily match the lore that's there. And so to have this presumed cave that's walls were lined with silver, these massive great veins, they could have happened. And there is one that we know of that's kind of, it's not huge, but there are some big silver veins in, I think it's northern Mississippi. So not too far from that general area. And there were, again, when you're talking about that Yoachum family and the migration they had coming from Mississippi, this is where lore and fact kind of start to merge. And I think this is where the story begins to take a life on itself. So it's very, very difficult to identify where in the story fact meets fiction, reality meets lore. And so we get kind of a hodgepodge in here. And so trying to make heads or tails of some of this was extremely difficult. But again, the silver dollars, the Yoachum silver dollars were in fact a local currency, and that we know. So one of the things looking at the specific item of the specific lore of this is looking at the industry when we're talking about the silver dollar. Now, there was an industry during this time frame, and it was called the Silver Dollar City. And it was offshoots of what they called the mined $1 billion story. And people had searched for this thing for forever. And again, when you're talking about what's going on, so legend talks about he built this cabin over the top of it. People talk about them once he had had a bunch of dollars and they had seen the molds, and that he created a map that had tracked schooled persons in geology, mining, and doing all the formation stuff. And again, in all of that, there was very, very little fact that came out of it. The geology study, the mining studies, all basically yielded a -0 in that particular realm. So when you look at the story, when you look at how it was tied, there really wasn't a whole lot. Now, the one thing that I was able to find is that in 1980, there was a gentleman who put this article together. He put the information together, and his name was Joel Thomas Orcutt, or Orcutt. I can't quite tell you how it is. But he was briefly talking with a person by the name of Artie Ayers. Now, Artie Ayers actually owned the property that was the mine that was supposed to be owned by the Yoachum family. And he wrote a book. Mr. Ayers wrote a book called The Traces of Silver. And in that, he talked about him going through and that they were able to find minutes, but nothing major like that item. They weren't able to find any tools. They weren't able to find any silver dollars. They weren't able to find any of the massive hoard that was supposedly there on that property. But what they did find is they did find some records regarding the distillery, and they did find some old, and of course the jars and stuff that they were put in were broke and stuff of that nature. But they did find that the dollar, again, in fact, was minted. And so they had that information. They had verified and validated that. But during time, we know that this to be fact because there's many pieces of documentation, not only in U.S. government documentation, but within the Indian tribe themselves. Now, most of the Indian tribe had died from a black rot disease after they had supposedly taken shelter in this particular cave. That we know that they basically were wiped out by a type of plague. But there were other people that came in. There were Mexican raiders that came in. There were other people that had come in and lived in that area. So a lot of the documentation, a lot of that stuff was lost to time. It's gone. And so it's hard for us to quote or to state specifically what happened on this particular dollar, or what happened with this particular trade unit, I guess you'd better say, than a silver dollar. And I'll kind of get into what I think the theory is here in just a sec, but it's hard to really do that. The one thing that I can say is looking through online trying to find things. Hey, what's up, Siren? Good to see you. The one thing that I can say is, as I'm looking through trying to find coins, there's tons of counterfeits. Like, a lot of people have fake coins. There are replicas of this. I think there's 2 different mints that actually make a replica of this. One looks more like the original one than the other ones do. The ones that have this real nice minting and it says Yoachum Dollar and all this nice stuff, it's more hand punched. So it wouldn't have been this nice silver flat minted coin. They would have been more like a hammer or a pressed coin. And so the ones that are like that, again, remind you, if you're looking for something like this, there are more kind of counterfeits or copies being made than you'll find the real ones. The real ones are out there, but they do fetch a heavy, heavy premium. So kind of going back into the silver dollar, when you look at the guidebook where they indicate items, so this is, I'm going to have to read this. I wasn't able to really kind of get in here, but during the 1830s, there was a great deal of private coinage that was being fabricated, and they weren't done to deceive the public. As stated before, they were made, these tokens or these coins, whatever you want to call them, were made because in local areas, the mint during this time frame was still fledgling and they couldn't provide enough. And so there's plenty of documentation from this. But there was, and I think it's, and again, I don't know what I did with that piece. I need to find it. But I believe it was 1865 or 1835. I'll have to double check that. There was a law passed through Congress that said foreign coins were no longer allowed to be traded. And so they were told to get rid of that. But during this time frame, this was a local dollar, so that didn't kind of fall into that category. But what it does do is it kind of gives us insight as to what the potential demise of the coin could have been. And so when you're talking about the Yoachum Silver Dollar, in many cases, the local dollar actually carried more weight. And I mean weight, not as in physical weight, but I mean more weight as in with the local desiring it over the U.S. minted coins. One other reason is because of the purity of the silver. They were estimated to be higher than that of the silver content that was coming out with the bust dollars during this time frame. And so they had a higher silver content. Therefore, they had a more of a premium tied to them. So people wanted those over the U.S. currency or the U.S. coinage. So in time, that would change, right? So in time, the U.S. Mint would increase the silver content. In time, the quality of the minting, the quality of the strikes, the designs would get better. There would be more of them distributed. They would have to worry on local coinage, and different rules and laws would be put into place to ensure that counterfeits and that were only being done by the U.S. Mint. So a lot of these private little minted items started to kind of fade away. And as those items became more popular, the demand for these kind of fizzled and faded away. Now, a lot of people kept these, and I shouldn't say a lot of people, some people kept these, but the theory I have on what happened to these is that they ended up giving them back, or they melted them down for the use of silver for other items, whether it be for trade, whether it be to put into bars. Because again, when you're looking at the silver versus the cost of the coin, sometimes the silver was more. We still have that today. If you take the American Silver Eagle and you look at the weight, the printed value on it, which is $1, versus what the actual coin is worth in the silver content at $31, $32, $33 with premium. So when you look at the difference, people obviously were taking the silver weight. Now, the cost of silver wasn't that high, but when you're looking at the ratios, you know, again, sometimes the weight of the silver far outweighed the printed, the face value of the coin. So what I believe happened to a lot of these is they were melted down Either they were captured by the government and melted down in a U.S. coinage, or they were locally melted down and then sold as silver bars. Now, we talked about during this time frame, the Spanish were coming through. You had Mexican raiders coming through. And if they were gathering these, they were probably gathering and taking the silver to melt it down. Now, during this time frame, there was also a war raging in the Mexico, kind of the U.S. border, where Texas, where I would become. You would see that kind of war starting in that general area for territory. So the Mexican government really needed a lot of silver and gold to fight Santa Anna and some of those battles that were happening all the way through that general region. So that whole region, even though it wasn't in the United States, California hadn't become a part yet, Texas hadn't become a part yet, there was the expansion moving west, but there was also wars raging down in the Mexico area for property, and you had the wealthy Spanish landowners who were trying to take over property in Santa Ana, who was trying to take it back from them, and they needed to fund their war against the Spanish. And so again, they would go through and do that. I believe a lot of that information, because when you look throughout Texas, there's a lot of stories about the Texas Raiders. When you look all the way up through the Ohio River Valley, all the way through the Mississippi, there are a lot of stories about Mexican raiders coming in, taking silver and gold, raiding banks, robbing banks, doing stuff like that, pillaging coaches. So there were a lot of events like that. And they were always after the precious metals, because the precious metals could be melted down, and then they could be taken back to Mexico and fund that war that was happening there. So I do believe that a lot of the items that disappeared from this region probably ended up in a multitude of certain areas. Now, with that being said, I want to kind of give you my opinion on what's going on. And I know that I've only taken a small portion to really talk about kind of some of the facts, but there's some things that I want to kind of talk about that kind of dispel some of the myths. And these are some of the facts. And I want to talk a little bit about the geology. I want to talk a little bit about the structure. Now, in looking at this, there was a report by the Geological Survey of Missouri, and they went through and they paired with the Geological Survey of Arkansas, and they wanted to look at the silver in those regions, and they wanted to go back and see if there were any traces of old silver mines that had been there, if they had been put into place, if they had been taken. And I want to see if there had been kind of, or they wanted to see, not I wanted to see, they wanted to see if there was kind of any fact based on this huge vein that they had found in this cave. And so they checked various areas. And what the Geological Survey came back and stated, and this was done 1834, and it was done by the topographical engineers, Featherstonebaugh, and they were inspecting these geological items. Okay, so here's what the report said. Were it not for the fact the proportions of the state are frequently overexcited with silver discoveries within the limits of Missouri, it would not be necessary to make a passing allusion to the fact of invariable absence of the notable. Let me try that over. It would not be necessary to make a more than passing allusion that the fact of invariable absence of notable amounts of silver or ores from this area exist. The vague traditions connecting with De Soto's expedition, again talking about the Mexican raiders, Spanish coming down, or the mythical silver mining Indian, which generally have no more substantial basis than a few specks of calcite, pyrites, and limestone at best. The discovery of a galante, fine-grained texture or large silver hoard is likely or is unlikely. So again, when we're looking at kind of breaking this out, when we're looking at talking about this particular item, we have to look at the other things that were happening during this time frame. Now again, the Yoachums were a very popular family, and we talk about the Indians moving from the Ohio River Valley and things of that nature. Now, if you look at that particular region, then you'll see something kind of interesting. And that is, hey Tiger, thank you. Don't you just love Frosty's attire? Yeah, I know. I'm laid back. It is what it is. But thanks for the $5 super chat, bud. I appreciate you. But again, when you're looking at the breakdown of this, when you're looking at the location, when you're looking at the time frames and things, what happened, one thing that was happening is that in the South, you're looking around the Georgia time frame, there was a lot of movement heading up. Now, in that time frame, in that shift moving upwards, there were a lot of silver and gold mines being had. Now, we're talking about areas around New Orleans, kind of the lower kind of Arkansas, Kansas, Kentucky area. And there were a lot of silver deposits. There were a lot of gold deposits in those particular areas. And there were Yoachum family members that lived in that. Now, they weren't tied to the Yoachums of the Arkansas or the Ozark Mountains, but they were in that particular area. Oh, okay. Well, I think that's just a comment. I didn't see that. Turn off the music. Okay. All right. Music's off. I didn't know if the music got too loud. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. I appreciate the text. But again, when we're looking at this particular area, the one thing that I found, which was really cool, was that there are Yoachum families that were tied to this. So there are people who moved from... What in the world is going on? Tiger gifted 5 memberships. Oh, I missed that. Okay. I was like, what in the world is all the ding, ding, ding thing for? All right. Thanks. And again, I'm not looking at chat. I have a whole lot of documentation here. So bear with me. I'll get to the chat here in just a second. I just want to kind of go over the rest of this. So as they were moving from the Ohio River Valley down, as they were coming down from Illinois, Indiana, which did have silver deposits up in that area, and as they were moving from the Georgia area, the New Orleans, Louisiana, and moving upwards, there were silver and gold deposits that were found there. Again, this is why things like Dahlonega, this is why things like the New Orleans Mint were put into place, because they did find large deposits of precious metals in those areas. And so they needed the mints as those regions started pouring in the raw mineral, gold, silver. They needed a place to refine those. They needed a place to make coinage and then distribute that accordingly. And so because there were Yoachums in different locations, as they moved to different regions, the stories of the Yoachum and the silver dollars and things of that nature kind of became tied to other Yoachum families. So what I believe, and this is my personal belief, again, I have no evidence to confirm nor deny anything within this legend. I can't say that it's all fact. I can't say that it's all legend. But what I believe happened here, and looking at the resources, is I believe that we have 3 different migratory events of peoples. We have the Yoachum families from the Ohio River Valley that happened to migrate through with the Indian. I believe that during that time frame, we have the Yoachum family that was there on the reservation. That's the Solomon Yoachum. That's the one that's tied to that. That's the peach lover, the one who made the whiskey, the brandy. They're the ones that the kind of story revolves around, because all of that information ended up in that particular area. And so, thanks, Sorcerer Stan. I appreciate the $2 super chat, bud. Thank you. But again, as you have this migratory event, you have people coming in to different areas, and they settle in this particular region. And because they settle in this particular region, there's already a Yoachum established, and there's already the dollar there. And so they're like, people hear of the Yoachum mine, they associate it with this person, even though it wasn't necessarily tied to that person. Hold on just a sec. I've got a message I have to take. Hold on. Okay. All right. So looking at this kind of construct, supposed to meet with Bifrost today, that plan changed and then it came back. So I'm just trying to coordinate my time with her. So sorry, precedence takes over when it comes to the kiddos. But again, I believe that there's this kind of migration thing that's happening. The secondary migration outside of the Delaware tribe coming down and the migratory event from the south, the migratory event from the north, and then the Indian migration all met in this one area. And so because of that, there was this culmination of storage, right? So again, I think that there's a lot of legend to this. I think there's a lot of fact to this, but I think there's a lot of lore that's kind of been brought in. As stories will grow over time, again, we talk about this time frame. A lot of things weren't written down during this time frame. A lot of things were spoken. There were a lot of legends, a lot of lore, and we were able to go through and, find some pieces. But because of the things that happened in the Civil War and the destruction of public records, it's hard to know exactly what land was where. Some items moved, some land areas moved, maps changed depending upon how big they thought a region was, or where they shifted. The reservation had shifted borders, so it got smaller and smaller over time. So what was the edge of the border at one point is no longer the edge of the border 15, 20 years later. And so when you're looking at this, it's really hard to determine where these actual events took place. Now, what happened, and I don't know how many years ago it was, but there was a damming of a river, actually two rivers, and it actually formed a lake. And a lot of this territory, a lot of these areas in which this Yoachum Silver Dollar story, where this myth, this legend came from, is now actually underwater. And so for many, many years, people would search, but they couldn't find anything. Now, the one thing that I thought was really cool, and I don't really like this, we're in a drought right now in Texas. And in Texas, our water levels are so low that in many cases the lakes that are there don't even exist anymore. They're dry beds. The rivers are dry riverbeds. There's no more area. So now you can search some of these areas. And it'd be really interesting to see if some of these lakes that are really, really low will be able to yield, or if anybody will be able to find anything. Now, one of the kickers about this, and this was told to me by one of the subscribers, and I apologize for not remembering who it was. I'll have to go back and look at it. I think it was Linda, but I'll have to double check that. But anyway, they were saying that they know that lake very, very well. They grew up there as a kid, and there's something like 1,000 miles of shoreline. So when you're talking about the search area for this particular subset of water, 5 years ago, you're talking about 1,000 miles of shoreline. You might be talking a little bit less now because of the drought and the water being so low. So there's a high likelihood that you could have some people back out searching for some of these things. The question is, are we ever going to find anything? And the answer is, who knows? We might be able to find something, they might not be able to. What does Frosty think? I don't think that much of it exists anymore. I think if they find anything, if they find a hoard, they're going to find a very small piece. A lot of the legends say is that he built the cabin over the entrance of the mine to hide it. A lot of those cabins don't exist, overgrowth and things of that nature. So if they're there and they were in the ground and the lake was put behind, these things are probably at the bottom of a lake somewhere and most likely are still underwater unless the drought has opened up that area. But even in that case, you're going to have years, decades of silt buildup. that have gone in and probably filled that cave up. So the likelihood that anybody will ever be able to find that is slim and none. Do I think it actually exists? It's hard for me to say. I think that in looking at this particular story, when you look at the Yoachum Silver Dollars, there's a great opportunity. I think it's something of interest and intrigue. And much like the story of D.B. Cooper, the legend is more fascinating than the fact that, yes, he lived or yes, he died. I think the mystery behind it is really what is intriguing. I think the fact that these are so rare that they're going to maintain their interest. A lot of people don't know this story, but a lot of people in the region do. And regardless or not whether the legend is true or whether it's just lore, I think this is a fabulous story. So I want to thank Philip the Board for taking time to let me know about it, for allowing me to do the research and put this together. And I wanted just to bring up the information that I had to you guys. Hopefully you found this of interest. And if you did, awesome. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and do what I should have been doing during the whole thing, which is looking at some questions. If you ask questions or made statements, but please re-put those in, because again, I won't be able to necessarily go back and look at them. Now, Siren over on the portrait side, thank you for being over there, Siren. You always mod on that side. I want to have a huge shout out to Siren for modding on the portrait side. That's awesome of you. I think they could find silver and gold near the mountains of the Pacheco Pass in California. I'm sure they could. A lot of people, the gold and silver that was found pre-California gold rush. Now, there were a lot of people that had found gold long before the big gold rush, the San Francisco gold rush, because they were found like in Southern California, they were found in northern Mexico. And again, during that time frame, you were talking about the Mexican government needing money to fight the Spanish wealthy landowners to fight their war against Santa Anna and make sure that they fought that the Spanish on that front, because the Spanish were coming in. Again, remember you're talking about the Spanish had already had the northern part of the United States down in through California, all the way down in the northern part of Mexico, and Santa Anna was trying to run them out to fight, and so they needed gold to fight that ever ranging front. As time progressed and the United States came over and started to expand, we started to encroach on that territory. Santa Anna and his team found himself on multiple fronts. The war got very, very expensive. So the likelihood of there being gold deposits or silver deposits anywhere through New Mexico, Texas, California, northern Mexico, down into the Baja region is highly likely. And again, when you're talking about this particular region here in the Ozarks, the one thing that was really fascinating to me is that there's all these massive stories, huge accounts, documented accounts, but when they do the geology doesn't match the story. So we ask the question when you're looking at things like, could it happen? Well, Easter Island used to be a forest, right? But they were so enamored with making these big things and moving stone that they build their homes and they cut down all the trees to move these huge, massive stones from one side of the island to the other. And now there's no islands on Easter Island, or no trees on Easter Island. So the question is, could there have been silver deposits, and could it have been mined so thoroughly that it doesn't exist anymore? That's not beyond the realm of imagination. There is a likelihood that something like that could exist. There is a realm like something like that could have happened, but I don't know the answer to that. And if you look at the geologic records, you look at the information that was done by the survey, it just doesn't support the conclusion that there was a mine or that there were multiple mines that carried this massive silver item or silver hoard in this cave somewhere. It also doesn't match the description of the events that took place with the Indians having such a large amount of gold that they hid it in a cave to hide it from the Mexican raiders. Now, we know the Indians had gold. right? But again, we're talking about them migrating from the Delaware, that Ohio River Valley, which we know silver and gold is in that area. So I think what happened is they're crossing stories. We got the southern migration up into that area. We got the northern one working down into that area. And if you look at those kind of cross blending, I think we just got a mixing of stories. They all came together, became one fascinating story. And again, the more lore that you put in, the more details you put in, the more you're going to have people tell that story. The more people tell the story, the more hunters you have. The more hunters you have, the more fake stories of treasure being found. And so it just becomes this vicious cycle. Do I believe the Yoachum Silver Dollars exist? Yes, we have them. We know they exist. They're documented. It's something that we can track, the Yoachum Silver Dollar. Was it this huge, massive thing in the region? Yes, it was documented that he did really well. There was trade silver. They took the bits of the ingots from the silver bars that were cut in trade for the whiskey, the peach. Again, I love the peach. And looking at these particular items and seeing that cross-pollination. So we know the item exists. We know the history of that exists. We know the Yoachums exist. We know that aspect of the story, but we can't confirm anything regarding the mine. We can't confirm anything of them pulling silver out of the ground. And if the Yoachums got their money from silver, it most likely came from trade outside of the region that came into that particular area, and they made their silver from stuff that was brought in. So Frosty's recollect, great story. That's my bottom line. Do I think the legend of Silver Hoard in there is there? Very likely. Is it tied to the Yoachum Silver Dollars? Probably not. There's probably Silver War hoards that are spread all through that particular region of people burying money, either retreating to come back or the potential onslaught of maybe army invaders. I'm sure people buried stuff. So are there things still buried in that region? I'm sure there are. They've been found. Are they going to be found very easy? No. Are they going to be found in a giant cave? Potentially. Will this one ever be found? No, because I don't frankly think it exists. That's just my opinion based off of the information that I had. But it is an amazing story. It is something that is a lot of fun. And again, huge shout out, huge kudos to Philip DeBoard for sending me this. I enjoy doing the research on this. So too much fun. The game is likely Frosty only reach out when the game is likely there's like Frosty only reach out when it wants to. If you enter commands at the same time, it's very likely that it'll only pick up one of the multiple commands. So give it a few seconds and then put it in. But yeah, so if you have 3 or 4 people playing, if you enter numbers at the same time, it's only going to pick up one. It's a limitation with the bot. So be patient with it. UCI to learn. Awesome story. Thank you. You're so easy and a great family man. Thanks, UCI. I enjoy. Oh, easy to listen to. Thank you. I love telling stories. I love educating. I like talking to people about events. I like people challenging me with items. Hey, tell me about this story. Again, I've been given another one that I'm going to look at regarding a hoard in Utah. And I'm going to be researching that one. I'm working on another story right now. I just about to publish it, make it live. I've got a review to do, and it's going to be, I think you'll really enjoy this. It's kind of the darker side of an event, a series of events of counterfeiting in late 17th, early 18th century Britain. And so I'm going to be putting that out, hopefully to release on Wednesday, and then we'll be talking about hopefully the following week. So got more stories coming up, got some more discussions, but I do appreciate you guys coming in. Are there any questions? I don't know that, yeah, Me's teaching everybody how to play the game. Awesome. Me is really good at this. We watched him during the trivia game yesterday. He was crushing these, doing really good. Woo a yay. I'm not sure what that means. And Nebraska was just prairie land, no trees. Last week we were flooded. Yeah, it's the flooding. It's amazing that storm that came through. It was a very, very fast moving storm, dumped a ton of water over a large region. It blew through Houston, came all the way up, jumped up into the Ohio River Valley. But again, we need that in Texas. We need the water. We're in a serious drought. So I wish we would get something that would sit over top of us. It'd be really nice if we could get some more water down here in Texas. I was hoping that it would skirt far east or far west of Houston and kind of give us some of that stuff here. We're in stage 3 conditions, so it's pretty bad. Herman, what's going on, brother? Thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming in. Make sure you smash that like on the way in or on the way out. But ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for today. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in chat. If we had problems with the music, if the music was too loud, let me know. I will work on reducing that a little bit. I know sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. So I'll continue to work on that. We'll see if we can do that. What's going on, Inkman? How you doing? So I'm going to kind of walk through here and see who's all here today. Let's say hi to everybody real quick. We've only got a couple of people that are active in chat. Well, let's see who we got here. Yeah, so we only have a couple of people. Michael Stacking's in the house, Herman Ortiz, UCI to Learn, Brown Sugar, Inkman, Roxzilla, me. So not a lot of activity in chat. Hey, Perplex, what's going on? So, but again, I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. I hope that you all have a wonderful day. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to go pick up my daughter and go hang out with her. I think we're going to go to a French festival. We're going to go have some French food here in Texas. It's going to be interesting. See what's going on. So we'll be doing that today. I may go live a little bit more, a little bit later, just really shortly to kind of say hi, kind of show you what the festival is like. If that's something you guys would like to do, it won't be very long because I'll have family there, but we'll kind of walk through, look at the vendors and stuff. If that's something you want to do, give me a thumbs up and I'll think about doing that. If not, I won't worry about it. I know we got a lot of other people that'll be streaming today. So we'll go ahead and take care of that. All right, folks, I hope you be well, be blessed. Enjoy your day, stay safe. And remember that tomorrow morning I will be here and most likely I will have Tiger and I will have Paula up on stream and we will be talking God knows what. All right, folks. Well, take care of yourself. Actually, no, I take that back. Take that back. Take that back. Take that back. Tomorrow is a very special day. I forgot. Oh my God. Y'all need to be here tomorrow. Paula probably won't be here. Paula's with her grandson in a sporting event, so she probably won't be here. I have Chuck Daughtry tomorrow. Chuck Daughtry and Eric are going to be on, and we're going to be talking large versus small dates. So when we talk large versus small dates, we're going to be talking 1960, 1974, and 1982. We're going to be talking about potential values. We're going to be talking about things you need to be looking for. We're going to be breaking this down. Chuck is he's volunteered his time. He's going to come in. He's going to share. Eric's pulling some coins. So we're going to be able to kind of go through and look at the differences between these. Really gave you guys some good information. So do me a favor. Make sure you're here tomorrow. If you know people who like to look at cents or like to search rolls, do those kind of things, make sure you're doing that. Not tomorrow, me. That's not going to happen. We've already got the schedule set. If you had a 60, 74, and 83, did you send me? No, you sent me an 83, not an 82. If you'd sent me one of those, then we could have done it afterwards, but wrong dates for what we're talking about tomorrow. But I will do that. I'll probably set up a live for that, and we'll probably go through those. But make sure you go through. Please go to my page, go to the lives, click on that for tomorrow, and share it out. The more people that have this, the better. Because again, this is going to be a really good discussion. And you guys, it's Chuck Daughtry, Copper Coins, the king of Lincoln cents. Okay, so please be here for the special guest, and we will see you in the morning. All right, folks, take care. And by the way, I wasn't trying to be cool today. These are my actual glasses, My eyes are giving me a fit, so I'm not trying to look stylish and hip. I just needed them to be able to see. You guys know that I have suffered some eye issues, so I really needed my good glasses today. All right, folks, well, take care, be well, be blessed. Love you all, and I will see you in the streams. Take care.